All right, it's 10 o'clock. I'm sure some people are going to be coming in as we begin, but I want to respect the fact that you're here on time. Uh, Erin, can you give me a thumbs up that you can hear me well? Although I can't see Erin right now. Good, awesome. Okay. Hello, everyone. We're live and this is being recorded. Welcome today to today's session on the 9 core features of positive behavior supports. This is a webinar focused on early childhood, birth to age 6. We're happy that you could join us today. I'm Lynn Stansbury-Brestrahan from the University of St. Thomas, and I'm part of the Minnesota PBS Network leadership team. I'll be introducing the Minnesota PBS Network and today's keynote speakers. Our Zoom host today is Erin Farrell from the Minnesota Department of Education, who is also part of the Minnesota PBS Network leadership team. We're going to start with Erin Farrell and find out who you are.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. So like Lynn said, thank you very much. I'm the Autism Spectrum Disorder Specialist for the Minnesota Department of Education. Just want to let everybody know that you will be muted on entry as you're coming in, but this is a typical Zoom meeting where you are able to unmute, where we are using the chat. Our hosts and facilitators are going to be putting things into the chat, and links and things like that. We'll also have polls, so just so you're aware, we have that feature. I will let Lynn take it away.
All right, so can we go to the next slide? The Association for Positive Behavior Supports is a national organization that has a mission to enhance the quality of life for people across the lifespan by promoting evidence-based and effective positive behavior support so that we can realize socially valid and equitable outcomes for people, families, schools, agencies, and communities. Our Minnesota PBS network is part of this national organization. The Minnesota PBS network brings practitioners together across Minnesota across different settings, populations, and lifespan to articulate PBS features and share about exemplary work being done in our state and at the community level. Can we go to the next slide? Our Minnesota PBS network has a focus on the impact of life trajectory. And I don't know why this whole slide isn't showing. So there we go. We believe if we collaborate across the state to provide positive behavior supports and choice across the lifespan, we can achieve each person's vision for a full life in the community. This session, as you can see from the arrow, focuses on birth through early childhood. Can you go to the next slide? Today's event is part of the Minnesota PBS Network's Collaborators Forum, and we've been doing these on an annual basis. And this year, our forum is a webinar series, and it's got 4 sessions, each with a keynote for early childhood, children and young adults, adult services, and older adults. Can you go to the next slide? The themes for the forum are 9 core features of positive behavior support, which are based on a 2002 article by Carr and Associates on positive behavior supports. And you can see here we have a reference to the article. We also are going to we have a link to the article on our website. And this article provides an overview of critical features that differentiate PBS from other approaches. And when you read this article, and it's very interesting, you probably want to do, you'll find out that PBS is an applied science that uses educational and systems change methods to enhance quality of life and minimize challenging behaviors across all demographics and settings. Let me just mute for a second while I talk to my daughter. I have a screaming child, of course. All right. All right, so let me see where I was. Erin, can you just talk about this for just a minute and I'll be right back. I'm so sorry.
Yep, absolutely, no problem. And so as a reminder to participants too, we are recording. We're also streaming live on YouTube. Um, so what we've been doing through the series of webinars this year, rather than having everything at the 1 or 2 day forum like we've had in the past, is we've been highlighting different core features with each presentation that's been done.
Of course, meltdown right when we start. Okay, all right. So with this, so I'm back. Thank you for your patience. Uh, the joys of working at home without childcare. All right, so what we find in PBS is that it's initially evolved in the fields of developmental disabilities. And in this article, what you'll learn, and you'll really want to take a look at it, it talks about how PBS emerged from applied behavior analysis, ABA, the normalization and inclusion movement, and person-centered values. And although elements of PBS can be found in other approaches, it is unique, and its uniqueness lies in the fact that it integrates critical features into a cohesive whole. And we're really excited that this work is being done in our state. Our state is working with the national organization. It is leading in many ways. You'll hear at the end of this presentation that we were even chosen to be the host site for the APBS conference. Unfortunately, that's gone virtual, and so we won't have everybody in location in Minnesota, but we'll talk more about that later. But continued evolution of PBS is likely going to impact assessment practices, intervention strategies, training, and extend to new population. And this approach reflects a more general trend in the social sciences and education away from, pathology-based models, deficit-based models, to more positive models that stress personal competence and environmental integrity. So take a look at this article. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Can we go to the next slide? And the Minnesota PBS network has taken the core features from the article and put them into plain language. And you'll see here, we've listed them out as 9 core features. Changes lifestyle, works across the lifespan, used across all settings, involves the people supported, creates effective change, helps improve outcomes by involving everyone and making changes together, decreases the likelihood of problems, uses research knowledge across science, and integrates multiple theories and values. And so in the article, it's a little more jargony, but we've taken the 9 features, and what we focus this series on is hitting these 9 core features. Can we go to the next slide? What I want to welcome you to do is our previous webinar by Dr. Filter was focused on children and young adults ages 6 to 21. And this session was recorded, and it did focus on 3 of the 9 core features, including involving the people supported, creating effective change, and providing supports for persons tied to supports for all with supports provided by all. So if you missed that session, the great news, it's recorded. You can go to our website and take a look at it. Let's go to the next slide. So in today's keynote, in keeping with those 9 core features, we're going to highlight 4 of the 9 critical features identified in that article we referenced. And that includes a focus on changes in lifestyle, working across the lifespan, involving the people supported, and an emphasis on prevention. Let's go to the next slide. So we invite people to join our network, and I just wanted to share a little bit of the great work that we've done. So one of the things that our group has done is taken and examined a continuum of positive behavior supports across the lifespan, across 3 peers. And so this is just highlighting some of the work that we've done. So with the 3 tiers and thinking about different age levels, we've done aspirations for exemplary communities. And we've looked at this from systems and supports, strategies and skills, implementation and outcome measures for decision making, and transition considerations. So on this first slide, you see the tier 1 aspirations for early childhood, K to 21 years old, and adulthood. Today, we will focus on tier 1 strategies and just that first column, early childhood. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll also discuss tier 2 strategies, and these are referred to as secondary support and prevention strategies. And these supports are for those who need more support than what's provided in that universal tier 1 level. And today we will focus on tier 2 strategies in early childhood. Next slide. And then you'll see that we've also taken and looked at tier 3, or those tertiary individualized supports. And those are for individuals who need more support than what's provided in tier 1 or tier 2. Today, we are going to be focusing on tier 3 strategies in early childhood. Go ahead and go to the next slide. It is now my pleasure, with interruption from a 3-year-old, so I do apologize about that, to introduce today's keynote speaker. Bonnie England is Assistant Professor of Early Childhood Special Education at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She received her PhD at Florida State University in Special Education, with an emphasis in teaching science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to children with autism spectrum disorder. Bonnie has taught in early childhood classrooms as both a general education teacher and special education teacher. Her research interests are related to teaching young children with autism early number sense concepts. She will be joined by Victoria Sundell from Duluth, who is representing the state implementation team for the pyramid model, and you'll hear a little bit more about that team. Once again, I remind you that I'm Lynn Stansbury-Brestrahan from the University of St. Thomas, and I'll be joining you again at the end. And we have hosting us today from the Minnesota Department of Education on Zoom, Aaron Farrell. I'm going to let you take it away, Bonnie. And thank you for those that said we've all been there. So always when you're doing something, do they act up? She was so good with the iPad, and then she wasn't.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for inviting me to be here. That's why I came to campus today, because I knew that the same thing would happen to me if I was home today. So yeah, but we get it. This new life on Zoom. And I appreciate everyone being here and being part of this today. We're going to talk about the support systems and practices that really support children during early childhood. And really, I should say children and families, because especially when we're looking at those young ones and we're supporting them in the household, it's not just about the students, it's about the whole family and how we support the family as a whole. And really talking about the pyramid model and that school-wide positive behavioral supports, interventions and supports, and family-wide interventions and supports as well when they're in the homes. So this is just a picture that really shows that in Minnesota, we have 2 aligned systems and they're really growing. So the first one is this PBIS network that really started in 2005. And as of 2020, you can see all of the green, we're really growing. There's lots of places that are really supporting and being part of this initiative to use PBIS. And the next one is that since 2010, the pyramid model has been an initiative in states. And you can see that that's growing too, that we have 87 early childhood programs that have joined that initiative and be part of it. And there's a lot of overlap and there's more growth that's happening. It's just growing constantly. And so these 2 systems are really working together to support our children and our families. So here's just another picture to kind of show the growth. And this first one is the PBIS, and you can just see how it's growing from the year that's sustaining in the second year, and just how it keeps growing each year. And the next one is for the pyramid model, and you can see that growth is occurring as well. So again, these 2 teams are really working on collaborating together, supporting each other, supporting you as practitioners, supporting families, supporting children, really doing everything they can to work together to make these 2 really important models work together for everyone. So there are 4 key features of that tier 1 PBIS. And so really the idea is that we want to define and teach a small set of behavioral expectations. Again, the idea is that sometimes we teach what we don't want students to do, but really the goal of PBIS is we want to tell them what we want them to do. We need to make sure we're very clear, we're very explicit about those positive behaviors that we want to see our students engage in. And we want to really make sure that we have that system of reinforcement of those performance behaviors and expectations. They know what to expect. They know what it's there. They know how they're going to be reinforced. That's really, really a positive thing. Again, we want to implement that consistent system to interrupt, correct, and redirect those behavior errors. We want to make sure that we're addressing those things right away. We don't want to let a behavior go, and so then it ends up becoming a larger behavior, really dealing with it immediately. And then building an efficient system to collect, summarize, and use data in decision making. Data is so very important. We want to make sure that we're really looking at what's happening, why is it happening, and what can we do to make a change. If you keep doing the same thing, but it's not making a change, you need to go back and make a change. That's why the data is really, really important, because it can show us if behavior is changing or not. So all of those features are really, really important as we're really looking at those features of that tier 1 in PBIS. So it is on this tiered support system, our lovely triangle that we see often, right, when we're talking about these tiers. In the PBIS system, all children need to receive behavioral support. So again, the idea is that every child needs to be taught what the expected behavior is. And so that's where we're really starting at the bottom with that universal or primary support to support the needs of all children. We've all seen classrooms where if there isn't a strong classroom management, then there's lots of behaviors occurring, right? That's not necessarily the fault of the child. That's because we need to make sure we have that strong classroom with those positive behavioral supports that are in there for every student. And then the second one, that yellow one, that's that targeted or secondary group. And that really is supports those students who are at risk. Those students who are showing some of those behaviors, who those universal supports aren't working for. So it doesn't mean they're not getting those universal supports. They're still getting those universal supports, but they need that added bump, that extra help. And then of course the top tier, which is for those who need those intensive, more individualized or tertiary supports, really much more intense. Those often who might be receiving the special education services at that top level. So here's just another picture of the pyramid model and how they visualize it, which is very similar. They have an extra bottom piece of that effective workforce, and that really is important, right? Having that strong foundation, that strong base is really what we need to build our pyramid on top of. If we don't have that, it's going to be so much harder to have that stable pyramid going up. And so that part is really important. And then the next part is those, again, that universal promotion of all children. It's the high quality supports in the environment, that nurturing and responsive relationships. So that piece is right there for everyone, for all children. Again, secondary is more those targeted emotional supports. And then on top with that, intensive interventions. So again, they're very similar models moving forward that really blend well together. So in early childhood, when we're looking at that tier 1, again, Lynn had mentioned that we talked about the system supports, those strategies and skills, implementation and outcome measures for decision making, and then those transition considerations. So in early childhood, when we're looking at that system of supports, we're really looking at program-wide buy-in, and where is your program? Is it part of an elementary school? So do you have buy-in with everyone in the school? Are they part of that whole school system? How are they all connected? How is the program as a whole? Do you have paraprofessionals or assistants in the classroom? How are they buying in? How are they working together? How does the administration buy into the whole program as a whole? Really, it has to be a collaborative effort with families, and we need to make sure that the positive behavioral supports we're providing and expecting are culturally sensitive and culturally aware of the families that we're working with. So it's really, really important that we're collaborating with those families and making sure that we have the same goal in mind. We need to have the capacity to collect data in the classroom and at the program level. And then we have to have coaches, right? We all know that teachers need help and support. And so a system of coaching everyone to really make sure that everyone has the expertise to really help support the behaviors in their classrooms or help to support families with the behaviors in their homes. We're going to talk more about strategies and skills as we go into some more of those key features. So I'm going to leave that one till a little bit later, but there's lots of just, again, making sure that you have those system-wide supports set up. And then implementation of outcome measures for decision-making. We need to make sure we have data. We need to make sure it's easy and it's accessible to parents and to the teachers, that everyone can see it, that they can access it, that they can see that it's meaningful. So finding a way to make sure that your data is really meaningful to everyone within your program, and that we're doing some sort of ongoing assessment for all of our children across those developmental domains, right? We know that when children are young, their developmental domains, they're so interwoven, right? And so we need to make sure we're paying attention to those behaviors and how they're affecting the child across all developmental domains. And then we have to consider transitions. There are so many transitions in early childhood. We have IEP meetings. We have to think about teacher connections. Yes, we have to think about kindergarten, but we also have to think about how they're transitioning from the hospital to home and how they're transitioning from home to preschool. There's just so many points along that line that are huge transitions for our parents and our children. And so making sure that we're really working together and making sure that their behaviors are supported within all those new environments that our students will be engaged in. So in tier 2, again, when we're looking at the systems of support, we are going to talk more about you can see that the team is meeting regularly, ongoing coaching and support. So just making sure that when we have some of those students who are at risk, that the teachers know how to support them. so that we make sure that the staff within the classroom knows what to do, knows that they're meeting regularly, that they're making decisions, that they're collaborating together to make sure they're really supporting everyone who's on that tier 2 need, who really has that at-risk spot. And then with those strategies and skills, again, we're still looking for program-wide behavior expectations and social emotional skills taught and referenced throughout the day, but they might, again, need small groups where they're being specifically taught those skills more explicitly, and just making sure that that connects to that program-wide curriculum that you have. And then social emotional curriculum and those key teaching competencies, just making sure we're really focusing on what does the student need? They're at risk. Why do we think they're at risk? And make sure we're focusing specifically on that piece. And implementing those outcome measures for the decision-making progress. Again, if they're on tier 2, we need to be taking data. Is what we're doing making a difference? Is that curriculum that we're making a difference? Are these things really making a difference in this child's behavior? So that we know, is tier 2 enough? Or do they need the added support of tier 3? So really, again, making sure that we have that data that's happening and that we're doing it with fidelity, right? That we keep doing it. We don't just do it sometimes. We do it always. And we're making sure that we're really, really focusing on continuing to do those interventions the way we're supposed to. And then with transition, again, there needs to be that connectedness. There needs to be that alignment between what's happening in their preschool classrooms to what's happening in kindergarten. And of course, we need to talk with the families, make sure there's a connection there as they move from their home into the preschool classroom. So they can kind of see how all these things are connected as the students grow and have all of those transitions. So tier 3, again, when we're looking at this, we have that system of supports. So this is, again, those students who are in special education most of the time, and that we're really looking at, do we need some extra behavioral supports? Do we need a BCBA or someone with similar training who needs to come in and support these students? We have to, again, have family collaboration. What's happening at home? What's happening at school? Or if we're going into their homes, what is going on that is the most struggle for them at home that we really can help support them with? What routine, what activity, what events are going on that we can support them with? And have that family collaboration. Again, we need to be culturally sensitive about those things. What I view as something that's a behavior problem, the family might not. And so we need to make sure that we're collaborating and working together on those things so that we're supporting the families as best as we can. This is also the time where we often have that functional behavior assessment or a behavioral intervention plan, really when it's appropriate. Sometimes we really need to make sure we're doing that. And even if we're not going to do like a formal one on our IEP, you can still do, like I like to say, a lowercase FBA, right? Like you're just doing it because you know every behavior has a function. Every single behavior that a student engages in has a function. So you're just going to do one because you're like, I'm thinking about this student. This isn't working. I'm going to just figure out what the function is and make a plan, even if it's not an official one on the IEP. You might need to go there, but you might just be able to do some of that on your own as well. And remember, including all members on the team. Every single member is really important. If you're going to make these plans, this behavioral intervention plan, it's not going to work if other team members are not engaged, if they're not involved. Everyone needs to be on board and be working together to changing these behaviors. Again, with strategies and skills, sometimes we talk about prevent, teach, and reinforce for young children. There's a book about it as well, but really the main idea is that we prevent it by the environment, the way we change things. Like I think about if you ever walked into a classroom and you can tell it's a running track, right? And so maybe we need to rearrange so it's not quite so easy to run around the whole classroom. So try to do some of those prevention pieces and then teaching the behaviors that we want and reinforcing those positive behaviors, just making sure we're using that cycle. And when things aren't working, we go back and we go, okay, how can I prevent this? How can I teach what I want? How can I reinforce? And continuing to use that cycle. And generalization is really important. We want to make sure that what we do in school works at home. We want to make sure what works at home works at school, that it's not just me that they engage in these behaviors with, that it's also with a different teacher, with a different teacher assistant or a paraprofessional. We want to make sure that it can work in so many different locations with so many different people. Again, if we only can do it in one environment with one person, it's not very meaningful. So we want to make sure that we can generalize those skills to every location and every person. We do, of course, again, we want to make sure that we're using that data, right? So we want to have the behavioral incidence reports that are happening. We just want to keep that data, be really clear about what's happening. And when we describe our behaviors, we have to be specific, right? We're not going to just say that they had a meltdown. We're not just gonna, we want to be very specific. What does that look like? How long did it take? Were they yelling? Were they kicking? What were they doing exactly? Again, being really specific about what that behavior looks like, how intense it was, how long it lasts. All of those things are really important in our data tracking. And then again, transition is key, right? These students that we can work on behaviors, and they work really well in our classroom and with us, and then they transition to a new place. How are we going to make sure when they transition, that will be successful for them? And really making sure we're supporting them in that location.
So thank you, Bonnie. So Bonnie did such a nice job of going over those aspirations for exemplary communities. So if you're working in the field, those are the things you should aspire to, and we hope are happening across the network. Erin was going to check in with you to find out who we have on the call today. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin, and then we'll go into the next section and talk to Victoria about the pyramid model.
Wonderful. I'm going to launch a poll now. So you're going to see it pop up on your screen. So you should see it now. So we just really want to get a feel for who's here today, and what is your role. So what best describes your role? There might not be a perfect fit, but what best describes the role that you're in, and your interest in what we're doing today. And as we get enough people answering, then I will show the results. So thank you to everybody participating. Looks like we have 2930 out of the 45 people here. Wonderful. We have a nice spread across a few different categories here. I'm going to just give it about 15 more seconds so that everybody has enough time to answer. Again, just what's best describes your role in providing support. All right, I'm going to end the poll and we will see who is here today. So I'm going to share these results with you. So we have a lot of early childhood educators, which makes sense within this being an early childhood presentation. So thank you. Lots of a few administrators, a lot of government agency workers. And so that really encompasses across community, state agency, and all of that. We have a few educators in K-12, community providers in residential, community providers in vocational, and a parent. So thank you all for being here today. And it's wonderful to hear a little bit about you. I will turn it back over to our presenters.
And so this is Lynn again from the Minnesota PBS Network. If after going over those aspirations for the continuum in early childhood, if you see anything that the Minnesota PBS team missed, please provide input to us. You can email, we have some email addresses at the end. Just let us know. At this time, we're going to spend a little time learning about the pyramid model that you heard us reference, and we're very fortunate to have Victoria Sundow here, who's going to add some important information. She's representing the state implementation of the pyramid model team, and she's a mental health coordinator from Duluth, Minnesota.
Thank you, Lynn. So like Lynn said, my name is Victoria, and I am coming to you from Duluth, Minnesota as the mental health coordinator for our preschool programs. Sometimes with my earpods that I have in, people say it comes across really quiet, so you may have to turn your volume up if you can't hear me very well. So I'm representing our state implementation team, and so for the pyramid model, we have a team of representatives from across the state of Minnesota that come together once a month, and we represent behavior coaches, that people that have expertise in behavior, internal coaches, people that are doing that coaching within the programs. We have state representatives from MDH. We have a state lead, content lead. We have data coaches on that team. We have representation from Head Start and ECFE. We're working on getting a parent representative for the state as well. And so we come together once a month and we look at how is the pyramid model going across the state? How are the trainings going? What kind of data do we have across the state in terms of areas for improvement for all of our programs, areas that we are excelling in for all of our programs. And if there's any sort of statewide concerns that we have, specific to, right now we're really focusing on behavior coaches getting more training and connecting the state behavior coaches. So that's kind of our role with the state implementation team. Specifically with pyramid model, as Bonnie was talking, I just kind of jotted a few things down. There's so much connection between pyramid model to PBIS, and we kind of, how we explain it as a state team is that, pyramid model sort of feeds into PBIS, because typically we're seeing PBIS in our K through 12 schools, at least here in Duluth and many other places in the state. So they complement each other so well. And we really focus on teaching kids what to do, being clear about our expectations, teaching the skills. And I think it's even more important with the littles, not making that assumption that they are coming to us knowing how to share and take turns and regulate their feelings and things like that. And so a big part of our training is around strategies to help intentionally teach children those skills, because we know that if children can regulate, then they have more capacity to learn. When we teach those skills, we really want to make sure that we are engaging in positive descriptive feedback for them so that they understand what they're doing and why they're getting the praise for that, so that hopefully that will, increase their likelihood of engaging in that positive behavior, in the future. Our data system that we mostly rely on to track whether or not children need to move up the pyramid is our behavior intervention, our BIRS, behavior incident reports. And that is a great tool because we're able to extrapolate classroom data, program data, child-specific data based on function, environment, response to intervention. It's a really robust data system where we can really get some good information to make sure that if we're moving children up the pyramid, that we have really good data on what they need from the next phase of the pyramid. And then our other big thing that we really try to teach with the pyramid model is routines to the third degree. And that's basically routines within routines within routines, and making sure that, and some of this might be gone over in the rest of the slides, so I hope I'm not overstepping, but really looking at, our schedule, and then, within that schedule, let's say circle time, what is the routine within circle time? And are there certain parts of circle time that might have their own sort of routine? And the more that kids understand all of those, sort of routines within routines, what we find is that they're more able to attend and stay engaged, and it's just more helpful for them. And then the last little piece that I want to talk about that might be slightly different for the pyramid model than PBIS is that tier 3, we look at tier 3 with the pyramid model as not just for children who are in special education. We really look at tier 3 for any child, recognizing that some children might have behavioral challenges that maybe don't rise to the level of needing special education at this point. And so we really look at that tier 3 as it can encompass any child that is in our program. And so we try to, go through the PTRYC process in order to sort of work through what strategies do we need to put in place to prevent the behavior, to teach the behavior, and to reinforce the behavior. So that's a little bit about pyramid model. I could go on for days because it is at my heart. This is something I feel very strongly about and connected to. And so if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if there's other pieces of information that you all would like, I'm happy to provide that.
All right, and we'll have some time for some questions at the end. All right, so now that we've gone over that continuum of exemplary practices that the state's identified, and we've learned a little bit about the peer model, our keynote's going to focus on 4 of the 9 critical features from the article we referenced: changes lifestyle, works across the lifespan, involves the people supported, and emphasis on prevention. Take it away, Bonnie.
All right. I am going to start on changing lifestyles, but I just want to say something that I thought of with Victoria's story about the routines within routines and how important it is to teach routines. I recently was observing in a preschool classroom, in an ECSE classroom, and they had a new routine. When they had snack, they had to take off their masks and they had to put it in this little container that they had. And I was amazed. Every student, the teacher had taught the routine so well that every student, they just knew, they sat down, they took off their masks, they put it in their little box, and then when they were done, they put it right back on. And it is those little routines that just makes the flow of the whole classroom just move so much smoother. So sorry, I just wanted to add that because that made me think of that, Victoria, with you when you were sharing. Yeah, so the first one we're going to talk about is changes lifestyle. And so when a behavior occurs, it does affect the child globally. It affects every part of their life, right? It affects their family life. And that's really important, especially through all ages. But when we're in the household, when we're doing those early intervention services with our students and we're in that house, those family routines, the way it affects their meal time? Does it affect their ability to walk their other children to the bus stop? Does it affect their ability to have playtime, to do Zoom meetings, whatever it is right now in their lives? That really, what are those behaviors affecting that is affecting the family as a whole? And we really want to make sure that we can make changes, again, that affect the entire family and the child together. It can affect their ability to build and create those friendships. And we know as students are starting to move into that preschool classroom and they're starting to build those friendships, learning how to share, learning how to engage in all of these different things in the classroom, we don't want them to, because of their behaviors, be left out or have trouble interacting with others. We want to teach them how to interact. We want to teach them how to engage in all of those things within the classroom. And again, how to play and engage with toys and activities. A way that, how do they play with toys functionally, teaching them those processes, teaching them how to engage in activities and to work with others and to really learn. And we talked about how I mentioned before that behaviors can affect a child across developmental domains. And this is kind of an example with it. We know that children learn best through play. Right? We know that's how our young children learn. And if their behaviors are preventing them from engaging with those toys in a way that they're going to learn best, it's going to, in the end, affect the rest of their developmental abilities. And so it's really important that we're supporting them through that and that they can work on that next point, learning across those developmental domains that are so important. We want to make sure the behaviors aren't preventing them from learning in the way that we would like them to. Another huge point is preschool suspension and expulsions. And many of you are early childhood teachers. From the poll that Erin had up, many of you are administrators, other people that are working with early childhood. You've maybe seen this in your practices when you've been with that there has been that students either come to us in special ed from being suspended or expulsion, or that you're seeing this happen in some programs. And just think about the effect that has on the child, on the family, on everyone when those kinds of things are happening, and really making sure that we're doing our best to support these students. We really can see that students who are suspended or expelled at this age, that they are 10 times more likely to drop out of high school, to have that academic failure, to have to repeat grades, have that negative attitude about school. And how sad is that they're just starting, right? They're just starting school, and that the behaviors that they have at this point in time, we need to help and support them. Otherwise, it can prevent them from being as successful later on in school as well. So again, we know early intervention is key. So we want to make sure that we're helping and supporting them now so that that doesn't become as much of an issue for them as they grow. So here's just some examples, right? So when we're looking at that bottom tier in tier 1, we're supporting those developments of those social emotional skills. Remember, that is for everyone and always for everyone. Even if they are a student on tier 3, we don't skip the bottom. They get everything, right? Everyone needs that support and that development of those social emotional skills. So this is where we're planning those transitions throughout the day. We're teaching them, what does it look like when you move from here to here? All those different things. As Victoria talked about, those routines within routines within routines. How do you go to snack? How do you come to circle time? What does that look like? How do you go to the bathroom at school? Because it's really different than how you do it at home, right? And then even again, for those students at home, teaching those transitions at home. What's that process for going to bed? What's the process for coming to mealtime? How do all of those transitions look? And teaching all of those routines. And then making sure that we are teaching them how to share and how to play with other students so that they're interacting with all of those things. Again, students don't come to us knowing how to do these things. They don't. And so we need to make sure that, well, some do, right? Because maybe they've had lots of siblings or they've been in other places, but there's a lot who don't know how to do these things. And because of their developmental age, they haven't engaged in these or maybe aren't quite ready. And we have to help support them to move to that next developmental stage. And so making sure that we teach them how to do those things, that we have strategies to support them. And teaching those self-regulation strategies, when we think about developmentally how you learn to self-regulate, right? When you're an infant, sometimes you learn to suck on your thumb or things like that to help regulate, but you need that parent support a lot of times. If you're really upset, you need your parent to pick you up, you need a parent to hold you, to support you. And as they move from the home into a preschool classroom, they're moving from trying to self-regulate without that parent there, with us being that in that role, yes, to help them, but they're gaining that more independence. And we need to support them along that process, teach them strategies, have a calm down corner, have a location that they can go to, they can calm down, figure out what they need to help them calm down and relax and be able to regulate themselves, because everyone's going to get mad because you're going to go into preschool and someone's going to take that toy from you. And what are you going to do? How do we teach them to regulate those kinds of things? And again, focus on that positive feedback. And again, positive feedback doesn't mean good job, right? That is positive, but it's not really feedback. It's not meaningful. We need to tell them specifically what they did well. I really like how you're sitting at circle time today. I really like how well you shared that toy. I like how you're taking turns. Be very, very specific about exactly what everyone is doing and what that means for each student. So really, really specific, direct feedback about what it is that's positive that you like. And this is a really fun age because not everyone, but lots of kids, especially in this tier 1, if you're like, oh, I really like how Sarah is doing whatever she's doing, half the class is going to go do what Sarah's doing, right? Because they're little and they want that positive support. And so the more positive you are, the more you teach it, the more you do those things, it's really, really helpful for the students. The next one is teaching specific skills during those routines. And so again, remember the bottom was we're supporting those development of the skills, we're teaching those routines, but sometimes the students in tier 2, they just didn't have the skills to support them to be successful in that. And so we need to go back and teach them specific things about what they can do to be successful there. So the first one is coaching families to support them to provide those positive supports and that specific feedback. So really helping the families to have that PBIS framework in their own homes, to really help them. How do I teach my child how to do this? How do I engage them in this process is really, really important. Again, making sure we're providing that specific, descriptive, positive praise. So when you got to catch them when they're doing what you want, so they can see, oh, thank you so much for doing this. I like that. And then reminding them and reteaching those daily routines, reteaching it over and over and over again so that you can make those changes. And again, teaching them what you want to do, telling them rocks stay on the ground instead of don't throw rocks, right? So using the positive language. My favorite little story with this one is that walking feet. Have you heard that one? You tell your kid, oh, use your walking feet. I had one little student who was running as fast as he could down the hallway. And I said that. I said, oh, use your walking feet. He looks at me with a sad face. He looks down at his feet and he goes, these are the only feet I have. And it was just so cute to hear that he just like, apparently I don't have walking feet. So just again, being really specific because he thought he had to change his feet. So again, being very, very clear about what the behavior is that we expect. And reteaching it with models, with examples, with visuals, with all of those pieces. And then again, practicing the desired behavior, such as taking turns. So maybe it's not really playtime and we're going to pretend, oh, well, I have this toy, you have this one, let's share, and practicing switching those toys. Again, you can do that even like practicing lining up at your door. You can do it again and you can do it again. You can pretend it's a movie. Oh, we're going to pretend we're making a movie and we're going to practice lining up. And you can do the same things at home, having this child practice whatever it is the behavior is that the parents want them to engage in to help with those routines, with those activities within that home. Practice, practice, practice. Moving on to that top tier, this is really where we're focusing on instruction to create change. We really, really want to make sure that we're having that really intense, focused instruction with these students who are still struggling. We know that we can change behaviors. We know that we can make a difference in this child's life. So again, this is where we're looking at making that change in their lifestyle. And so we really need to have intensive focused support at that top tier. So here we're going to create schedules. Maybe they might need a schedule to help them move through those routines. And maybe the schedule is too much. It's too many things and they need a first this, then that chart. So it can be first meal time, then playtime. It can be, while you're at school, it can be first group work, then toys, or whatever it is in that child's work, giving them that opportunity to know that this is the schedule, this is what's going to happen today, to really support them with them being able to move through those transitions throughout the day. And then practicing those social emotional skills with adults. So when we're at that bottom tier and that middle tier, yeah, you might get some practice with adults, but a lot of it's happening in the whole classroom with everyone, and you're practicing with your peers. And then some students, that's too much for them, and they need to do it in that smaller environment. They need to do it with just adults and practicing with us. So we might play a game with them and practice taking turns back and forth, or practice sharing a toy back and forth, those kinds of things, so they can really practice that with an adult and then move into practicing with a peer if they need that added support. And then again, I mentioned calm down corners. They can be used on all tiers, but sometimes this is where we're really going to say, we need to go to the calm down corner. We're going to design that calm down corner with that specific student in mind, because we might know that they love whatever it is. Maybe it's one of those things with a liquid in it and it turns over, and it bubbles all up. Maybe that's their favorite thing. Maybe it's a specific fidget that you have in the classroom or a specific toy. And you want to make sure that if that calms them down, it's in that calm down corner. It's there for them. And that they use that and they learn how to go there to really learn to self-regulate and calm down. And that they use those sensory strategies to support that self-regulation. And again, not every student needs the same sensory thing. And not every student really wants all those sensory things. Some do, some don't. Some avoid them, some want a lot of it. So you just need to know the student and really make sure that you have the supports in your classrooms to help those students. They might need a body sock, which is one of those blue things that they push in. They might need something that shakes or makes noise, or something that they can look in. They might need a weighted blanket. They might need who knows what it is, but something that they need to help them with their self-regulation should be in that corner. And you can work, again, it's a team thing, working together. Your occupational therapist might be really good in supporting with that. And you might just have to try different things, because you never know what is going to work until you try those different things and see what that student seeks out and needs to help them self-regulate. All right, moving on to lifespan perspective. I think it's really, really important when we are working as early interventionists and preschool teachers that we are thinking about the child across their entire lifespan. It's really, really valuable to see them, like the choices we make for them today, the behaviors that we focus on, the things we choose to teach them, the amount of inclusion we give them is going to affect them for the rest of their lives. And so it's so important that we have a lifespan perspective in early childhood. It's going to affect the way the students and how they grow and develop. Early intervention is key to creating change. Even going back to the suspension and expulsion, right? We could talk about that here too, right? And the idea that the changes that happen, it's going to make a huge difference later on in life. And that's really a huge focus for all of PBIS throughout. That's why PBIS starts in early childhood, right? And goes all the way into adulthood. That's why they're working through it. And the same thing with the pyramid model. It's not just an early childhood pyramid model, right? It's across the whole age group, because students need that support throughout the entire lifespan. And so making sure that's there to support them. Choices and decisions, again, made by adults in young children's lives will have long-lasting effects and outcomes. And so we need to really think about that. It could even affect them later as they move forward, as how they're going to fit into the workforce and how they're going to find jobs and things like that. So early childhood is the beginning of all of those things as they grow and develop. So again, here's our lovely pyramid, and we're going to start at the bottom where we're teaching meaningful behaviors for success. Again, we want to teach them behaviors that are meaningful, behaviors that are going to affect them across the lifespan, that are going to be meaningful for them as they grow and develop. So we want to, first of all, make sure we're providing those inclusive opportunities for all of our students. It's good for them to see people from different walks of life, from different areas. Even this diversity piece should be there as part of that inclusion. It's not just inclusion between special ed and general education, but just inclusion across the board, and make sure that they have opportunities to see different people, see different opportunities of how different people interact and engage. We want to work on all students developing a theory of mind about having a perspective of others and empathy. Sometimes we think about theory of mind as being, something we talk about in autism, but all kids, when they're young, they're developing that theory of mind. When they're really little, right, it's all about them. It's all about me, because that's how they should be. That's developmentally where they are. And so teaching them, oh, when I do this, it affects another person. That's how that person feels when I do this. And so that's that base. Every student needs to learn that. Some students just learn it on their own, but others, we do need to make sure we're teaching that we're supporting them and planning that. And that we're also planning those transitions. And that's transitions, like, yes, as they move from home to preschool and preschool to kindergarten, but it's also just those daily transitions, right? Transitions can be hard for kids. They love to play. And all of a sudden, I have to pick up and do something else. So not only do I have to stop playing, but I have to clean up, and then I have to go do something I maybe don't want to do. So there's just all of those pieces in it. So planning that, helping them with that, using timers, using visuals, teaching them what that looks like, giving some kind of prompt, whether it's a cleanup song or a specific noise or a specific visual you hold up to help them work through those transitions. And providing opportunities for them to engage with peers. So hard right now, right? Because if you are in a preschool classroom, maybe you're doing it over Zoom like this, tricky to try to get them to engage with peers. And if you're in an actual classroom, they're still supposed to keep that distance. They're supposed to keep that space. So trying to help support them engage and work with peers. Again, I was in another preschool classroom and they were having snack and they had to each kind of be at their own table, and there was plexiglass between them as they were eating snack. And the student at one table wanted to talk to the student way over there and was like, teacher, why can't I sit there? Why can't I just go over there? And to try to help them understand that it's hard. But we still know how important that peer engagement is. So finding ways for them to still connect. Yes, we want to keep them safe in this time during COVID and all of those kinds of things, but still working on how can they still connect? How can they still learn to play together? How can they learn those appropriate peer interaction pieces from others is so important, because we know they learn best from each other. All right, moving to tier 2 on this one, focused instruction on those challenging behaviors, right? So every student is going to engage in challenging behaviors at some point in time. All of you have worked in the field or are a parent or have some connection with early childhood kids. I bet that pretty much every child at some point in time has engaged in some behavior that you've been like, oh, this is challenging. It's been a day, right? It happens with everyone. And so really, this is where we move up to those who are at risk, or maybe are having a few more of those challenging behaviors, and we're really going to focus on those. So we want to make sure we're providing them that inclusive experience, right? So again, we're not going to just pull them out of the classroom. We're not going to say, oh, they're engaging in a challenging behavior, they don't get to be here anymore. No, we're going to provide that inclusion so they can have those peer models, so they can be engaged in the classroom as a whole with everyone. We want to make sure we're using that social skills curriculum. So I really hope that if you're working in a classroom, you're working with parents, whoever you're working with, that you are using that social skills curriculum, that you're supporting families, that you're supporting everyone to really make sure that they are learning those skills. Again, they don't just necessarily come with these skills, right? We have to specifically teach them. And again, that moves into that next stage where, again, we're providing that specific description, positive praise and reinforcement to increase those pro-social behaviors. Again, we need to reinforce them. These little ones, we need to make sure we're giving them more positives than we are negatives. And that those positives are very, very specific, are very, very clear. Again, telling them exactly what we want them to do. What does it look like to sit at circle time? Circle time's a big one where sometimes we have problems, right, in early childhood, and we're like, how do I get them to sit for circle time? Well, did you teach them what it looks like to sit? Did you teach them what you want their eyes to do? Did you teach them what you want their hands to do? Did you teach them what their voices should do? Did you teach them how, if they have something to say, how they're going to say it? Because that's different for every teacher. Some teachers really insist on the raising hands. Other teachers are okay with students saying something out loud when they have a comment. And so you need to figure out, what does that look like in your classroom? And the same thing is true again when we go to the homes, right? Every family is going to have a different idea of what positive behavior in their household looks like, and really helping support the family to be descriptive, to give that specific praise to every student, to every child in their household, so that the child knows what's expected of them in that environment. All right, so the providing that intensive supports related to the behaviors. Again, this is where we're going to be providing those, we still need to be providing those inclusive opportunities. And I don't know if you noticed in this one, each tier has an inclusive piece. And I wanted to make sure that that was there, so that we're always making sure we're including students as much as we can. We know that students learn from each other. And so we want to make sure that that inclusion piece is there for every single stage of this pyramid, whether, as they were talking about with the pyramid model, that 3 is for special ed or not in special ed yet. Everyone should always be included. This might be where we're creating those behavioral support plans. Again, every behavior happens for a reason, every single one. Sometimes you think, oh, they're just naughty, or they don't know, you know, those kinds of things. That's not true. They have a function. They're getting something out of that behavior. What are they getting out of that behavior? Or what are they escaping out of that behavior? You know, what is happening that's making them engage in that behavior, and creating a plan to support them. Remember, if we want them to stop a behavior, it's also really important as part of that plan that we teach them a replacement behavior. We teach them what we want them to do. We teach them something else, right? So it's really, really important that we teach those replacement behaviors. So if a student gets mad and they throw toys, what are you going to teach them to do instead? Okay, you don't want them to throw toys when they get mad. What can they do? They want to express their anger in some way. So what would be an acceptable alternative to doing that? So making sure that we look into teaching them how to ask for a break before they get upset, and make sure we're teaching them how to go to the calm down corner, how to do what it is that they need to self-regulate. Again, it's really independent for each child, right? And so we need to make sure that we're thinking about that student. What does that student need, especially when we're on tier 3? You know, all the tiers, we always need to be thinking about the individual child, but right, the idea is at the bottom, it's everybody. In the middle, it's a little bit smaller group. In the top, it's that individual. So really making sure we're individualizing everything we're doing for that individual student, so that we can best support them to make those changes to help support them. There's so many ways that you can do this and teach them. And I've seen lots of teachers do. Have you heard of what extinction is? Probably a lot of you have. That's where you ignore a behavior until it stops. Really good strategy if the student is trying to get attention. But if you put a student on extinction and you don't give them a replacement behavior, it doesn't usually work very well. You want them to learn, how do I get attention appropriately? So if what I'm trying to do is gain attention, and maybe it's by yelling or throwing something or whatever it is, if you don't teach me how to do that appropriately and all you do is ignore me, I'm just going to feel ignored. So again, teaching them how to do it appropriately, giving them those positive, those helps, those supports about what it is that they need so they can be most effective. And make those changes again across the lifespan, teaching these behaviors that are going to make a difference now, tomorrow, in kindergarten, in high school, in their jobs later, or as they go to college. All right, so theme 4 here really involves all the people that are supported. And I like this one, and I think I maybe expanded this a little bit more than what the article was completely looking at. But for me in early childhood, the people supported aren't just the child, it's the family too, right? It's everyone. We're not just supporting the child and making that child be a part of it. We're making the families be part of it, where everyone is being supported there, because we're all working together. We're all a cohesive group that's really working forward and supporting this child. And so when we're involving the people supported, we're going to coach and support the families. Early childhood intervention, when we're going into homes, has changed a lot lately, right? It used to be you had this big old team and you all went and you had your bag, right? You had your special bag that you brought with, and you brought it to your preschool, you brought it into the homes. We don't really do that anymore, right? It's not really our goal anymore. Now we have we have one person who's that main person who is working with the family. They're coaching the family. The idea is to support the family so that they can be the ones who can support their child best. And that we use the things the family has in the home. Doesn't mean we don't occasionally bring visuals or something with us. That's fine. But that whatever we bring, we leave there, that it's for the family so they can do it later, so that we're supporting all the people involved, and that we pay attention where they're to the other sibling, because if there are other siblings there, how does that work? And that when we're coaching the families, a lot of times we end up only seeing the moms, right? Because that's who's there sometimes during the day. So making sure that we have that interaction with the father, with the other children, with whoever else is in the family. So we're supporting the whole family as a whole and coaching them all together. And the next part is like really working collaboratively with everyone in the classroom is going to best support that student. So as we work together, it is really important to make sure that it is just this collaborative environment where everyone is working together to best support the student. That is what's going to make change. That is what is going to do those other two things we talked about. That's what's going to make change in behavior, and that's what's going to make change across the lifespan if everyone is working together. And then working with the student to make those good choices so that they can learn about that. One of the phrases I used a lot was, oops, try again, and so that it wasn't that you're wrong. It's not that you're bad, but that we're not going to do that. Let's try something else. Let's try a different way to gauge in this behavior so that the child is making the choice that they can, and when they're able to make that choice, it makes some differences. So here's our pyramid again. And here, I don't have all the pieces on the side, but I just really wanted to make sure that we're looking at who are the people right involved with everything. And I really like to, this is a little different, but yet the same of the pyramid model. When we looked at that, right, it had that base, that really strong base of that workforce is the base for everyone. Like it has to be that strong foundation to really be successful. And so when we're looking at the bottom, we're looking at families. We're looking at how are we going to support the families? They are the people who are involved. We're servicing them, right? It's an IFSP. It's an individual family service plan. It's about the family. It's about everyone. And so we're making sure that as we're supporting them, that we have the families involved. We have the teachers involved. We have childcare workers. We have peers. We have the student. We have everyone. There's so much involved in there with everyone who's working together, doing everything they can to build up, again, that strong foundation for our children. It's amazing when you think about our little kids, how many different people are involved in their lives and how many different places they go. Maybe not now, maybe not because of COVID, but hopefully we'll get back there, right? Where they're going to so many different people, and there's so many different people that touch their lives and engage in them. And we need to do our best to make sure that they're supported within all those environments, because that is best going to help them. And then as we move on to that next spot where we're making sure that the people involved, right, that everyone is supported, the special education teacher is there, there's going to be support staff, that everyone again is engaged. And this is really system-wide. So it's a school-wide system of supports, right? When we think about that, it's everyone in the school. So it's the administrator, it's everybody. And so when we move into that next step where they need that added support, we need to get more people involved. Who else is going to be involved? Who else is going to support this family to make sure they're getting everything that they need? And then at the top, again, working with making sure we have social workers, there's mental health practitioners, that all those people are engaged. There are so many helps and supports within our districts, and I don't think we use them enough. We need to make sure we're utilizing them. We're making sure that we're working with them, that we're connecting with them so that students can get help and support, that we're not waiting, right? We're not waiting until the behaviors get so bad that it's such a problem. We're doing that early intervention. We're helping right away. And that we let families know that we have these supports, right? So that families don't feel alone. Sometimes it is really hard to admit that your child has a problem, to admit that there are behaviors happening in your home. And so really making sure we're doing everything to support those families, to helping them engage, to making sure that we say, social workers aren't bad people. They could come and they could support you and come in your house and give you ideas and suggestions for this. Could we connect you with a mental health practitioner that could help support you? Could we help you find childcare that was less expensive, and finding supports to help pay for your childcare? What can we do to help support you across all of these areas? So starting at that bottom, right, and working up to as they need more and more support for their child as the behaviors increase. And so we just need to make sure that everything we're doing is about the family and about the child, and that we're engaging people across all three tiers to make sure that that child is best supported. All right, so this is my last one, my last theme here. And it really is about the decreased likelihood of problems. And really what we want to do is we want to prevent behaviors before they occur, right? And we think that, this is that whole idea of if you've talked about A, B, C, there's an antecedent, there's a behavior, and then there's the consequence, right? We want to stop it before it happens. That's the A. That's what happens before the behavior. And I mentioned before, like the running track in your classroom, thinking about that, moving that, thinking about how can I change something in my classroom. And sometimes you have to think about, you don't know that until the students come in and what it is that bothers them or starts that behavior. It makes me think, my mom used to do this all the time when I was a little kid, right? Like if she would say that the toy was being naughty and she'd put it on top of the refrigerator, right? And just this idea that, oh, well, that's not working, so it's gone, right? Removing whatever it is that's bothering us and putting it away. And it's preventing that behavior before it occurs. And then coaching the family through that, helping support them in, how do I prevent behaviors? How do I make this routine function better for my child? And we have to be really careful as we're coaching, as we're working with families, that we're not being judgmental, right? Because maybe they found something that works for them, even if we don't agree with it. And so, for example, I had a student once who, when I would go to his home and we'd do a home visit, meal times were a problem for them. And the way they had solved it is, he was 5, they'd put him still in his high chair and they'd put him in front of the TV with his food. And a lot of us would go, okay, it's a family thing, we all need to be together. And what the family said, but the rest of us can have a little bit of time to talk and eat. Now, let's think about that. Would I prefer that this child maybe ate with the family and was engaged with everything, was part of it? But at the same time, the family was also giving themselves a break, giving them a chance to be together and be engaged. And so when we're coaching families and we're talking about those daily routines, that we're being careful about what's important to the family, what does the family need, and how can we really support them so that it works best for them and supports them. And then focusing on changing the environment to support the needs of all students within the classroom. So making sure that there's enough space in the classroom, that there's enough toys, that there's enough room, that there's enough everything, that you have really thought about everything you put into your classroom and how it is. So is your book area also your calm down corner? Sometimes that works, sometimes that's hard too, because if a child's mad and upset and you put them in the calm down corner and that's where all your books are, they're going to get wrecked, they're going to get destroyed, they're going to get thrown. Right? So thinking about those kinds of pieces, if that's a problem, then you can't have your reading corner and your calm down corner as the same thing. And then if your circle area, because a lot of our space in our classroom, right, our circle area tends to also be our play area. So do you have the toys covered in some way? Do you have them so that they're not like accessible during that group time, that circle time? Just all those kinds of things, thinking about our environment to support our students so that we can decrease the likelihood of problems. So example here, when we're looking at that bottom tier, the main thing is just creating the environment that supports positive behaviours, right? So making sure that we set up that physical environment, that again, there aren't toys like right next to me while I'm sitting at circle time. Man, this is circle time, the story is getting kind of long if I'm a preschooler, right? And there's a toy right there. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna go play with the toy, right? So just making sure that environment is really set up to help support our students. And again, so even when you're playing with toys and things are out, can they access them? Can every child grab what they need? Can every child play with what they need? Or is something that they can still see, but it's way up high on that shelf and I can't get it? Those kinds of things could cause behaviors to happen. Another really important thing that I think about that in physical environment is if you have locations where students are going to sit, you should sit in every one of those locations and see if you can access the environment, if you can do that. I think about that at circle time. And one of the things I see a lot is if you have them in an actual circle, which isn't necessarily bad, or even if they're kind of spaced out in different ways, sometimes the students at the end can't see the book or can't see what you're pointing to. So making sure that every student has access to what it is you're teaching them about and learning, they're supposed to learn about. Because if they can't see the book, they're going to probably start engaging in behaviors because they're bored. They're not engaged, they're not part of it. So making sure that that environment is set up to really support that student. And again, making sure that we create developmentally appropriate expectations, right? So circle time is not going to be an hour, right? I'm not going to read this book that has so many words for the page that they're too much language for the child to begin with. And second of all, it's going to take so long to read that they're not going to be paying attention anymore. And then thinking about in the activities we're doing that they're developmentally appropriate, that they're not beyond where our children are developmentally, that it's something that they can engage in, it's something that they care about, it's something meaningful to them. This idea of that, like, we want to make sure that our activities, the things that we do with them, are meaningful for them. An example, again, in the home, when you're working with students that are younger and you're servicing them in their homes, making sure that the activities that the families engage in, that they're developmentally appropriate, that the expectations of the family are developmentally appropriate for their child. And also using what they already do. So if you're trying to get them to ask for more or something, and the family has this tickling game or this ball throwing game or whatever that they do with their child that the child loves, then that's where we're going to do that, right? So just, again, figuring out what they do, what they like, what they already engage in, and building on that, building on those strengths. Another really important thing when we're creating that environment is limiting that wait time. So wait time is something that if I'm a preschooler, if I'm a kid at home, I'm 2, whoever I am, right? If there's a downtime, I'm going to find something to do. And sometimes what I find to do is not what you want me to do. And so it's really important that when we're trying to move from one activity to another, and we want to do that smoothly, that we have as limited amount of wait time as possible. So for example, if you're at home and you say it's time for dinner and you call everybody to the table, but you don't have the food out and ready to be on the table, then they might wander away again, or they might go somewhere else, or they might start fighting with each other or whatever. So you want to limit that wait time. You don't want to call them until you're ready for them to come, right? Another wait time is in the classroom, right? As maybe you move them to different small groups that you want them to be engaged in the classroom, but you don't have your activity ready at the table yet. Well, then a student's going to stand up from the table. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to do whatever. So making sure that there just isn't as much wait time, that you have it ready. You have it ready to go right away. This is also true, like if you don't have a bathroom in your classroom when you're at school and you have to go use the bigger one in the hallway or something like that, find something for the students to do while they're waiting for their peers to get out of the bathroom. Sing a song, count something, bring a book bring something, make sure that they're engaged so that wait time doesn't exist. Again, if the child doesn't have something to do, if you don't give them something to do, they will find something to do. And so making sure that that wait time is limited. As we go into the added needed environmental supports, we might need to add something else to really help support them. So consider the impact of environment stimuli. So something in the environment that shows them this is what I need to do. And that could be a visual schedule at the front of the classroom, right? So that they can know I'm doing this, and that they see that. It can also be like, I know it's not playtime because this curtain is down over the toys, and that stimuli tells me I don't do that, right? Or that I know it's snack time because you always have the same red bucket you take out when it's snack time, right? So there's something in the environment that cues them, that supports them into knowing what they're supposed to do next. Another really important thing I like to, it's my basketball reference, I like to call it the zone defense as we're supporting our students in our classroom, right? So if you're not a basketball person, you don't know what zone defense is. It's this idea that you're spread out, right? So there's man-to-man where you decide, I'm gonna watch this person, I'm gonna be on this person, I'm gonna be on this person. But that doesn't really work in the big classroom with lots of people, right? Sometimes you have to have one person assigned to a specific student. But I'm talking about like when you don't have that, and what you really want is you want to spread out the adults out. Adults sometimes tend to congregate together, right? They tend to be in a little group all together. And sometimes it's playtime. The kids are playing, they're being just fine. We're going to stand over here and talk together. Well, that's not the idea. The idea is you want to spread the adults out throughout the classroom so that they can engage with the students, so that they can be part of their play, so that they can help kind of push them to the next step or help support their sharing or their conversations or all those kinds of things. So spreading out to being that zone defense across the whole classroom so that there's no place in the classroom that a student can go, oh, I know if I go over there, there is never an adult over there. So I'm going to go do whatever I want over in this corner, right? You don't want that. We want to be spread out so that every place in the classroom has an adult, has someone that's there, that's watching, that's supporting their development in the classroom. The next piece here is providing that consistency, such as a schedule with visual supports. And it kind of goes with that stimuli. I talked about that before. All of us like to know what's happening, right? We all like to know, what am I doing next? When, it's getting close to lunch. When is lunch on my schedule, right? We all need that. We all need that support. And our students, they can't read or necessarily at this age. Some can occasionally, but we want to make sure that we have that visual so that every student, that whole class visual, that everyone can see, that they can have that added support so they know what's next. They know what to expect that's coming in their day. And then when we're getting into that third tier, we're really going to make sure that we're modifying and that we're going to make that significant environmental changes when we need to, such as remove an antecedent, a trigger for a behavior. And it could be anything. Every student is different. And it could even be something that they really, really love, but they're just unable to do anything else when it's there. Like maybe there is a specific train and that you have in your classroom and they just love it, or a specific doll or whatever it is. And it's great that they really love it and you're glad that they want to engage and be part of that. But if that is where they can't share, they can't put it away, or they can't do anything else with it, then maybe it needs to be away for a while we learn some of those behaviors, and then we can try bringing it out, or bringing it out occasionally at different times and teaching them how to do that. Again, when we talk about those ABCs, and thank you for sharing that in the chat about what the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Again, when we're looking at that antecedent, what is causing this behavior to occur? And can I change it? Can I make it go away? Can I change what it is so that it's different? So another thing that sometimes happens, like we talked about stimuli, showing them something as a transition. Some teachers will do the flashing the light. Some students, that's too much for them. Can't handle that. The flashing the light bothers them. And so we need to then choose something different. Well, how else can we help our students transition? What else could we do instead of that? So again, there are so many antecedents. We have to do our best to remove them. When you remove them, then the behaviors don't occur. And so really making sure we're modifying our environment in a way that that doesn't become a problem. And then again, teaching those pro-social replacement behaviors. And what I mean about that is maybe what they're doing is they're chewing on their shirt, right? And we don't like that. We don't like the way that it wrecks their shirts and then they're always wet, right? So what is a pro-social replacement behavior? Could we get them some kind of necklace that even would be like a cute little preschooly necklace, it looks like, that they could chew on instead? That would be better. Or something else. They need some kind of, they're getting some kind of sensory input from that. So what could we teach them to do instead? And really when we're teaching behaviors, we are making a choice for our students, for those who are in there, about, is this a behavior that's okay? Is it not? And thinking about just changes that have gone on. I think about autism, right? And we used to be like, oh no, we don't want them to hand flap. And then we're like, oh, but they need that sometimes for sensory things. And so really the changes that we've made with that is making sure that you're really thinking through culturally and all those kinds of things, and really putting the student first as you're teaching those pro-social replacement behaviors. And there's a lot. Someone's asking if there's a pro-social behavior for spitting. If they need to spit, the one that just comes to mind, and maybe other people have ideas, is they can go to the bathroom and they can spit in the sink. If you need to spit, then go to the bathroom, and that's where we spit. And so just teaching them that they can, that it's okay to do that behavior, but here is where you do that. I don't know if that helps, but that's one idea that just comes to mind off the top of my head. And then social stories or social narratives. So social stories are trademarked. So we can kind of do the same thing with what we call a social narrative. And if you don't know what those are, it's this idea of where we write out how you're going to act or behave, or suggestions in this certain time of day. So like, maybe it's getting on the bus is really hard for them at the end of the day, and that's really hard. So you're going to write a social story that talks about the school day is done, the bell rings, the timer rang, whatever it was, and then you're going to go into the next thing and you're going to talk about, okay, now it's time to put our coat on, get our backpack, and then we're going to go on the bus. And then you can even give them some ideas. What can I do on the bus? I can look out the window. I can talk to my friend. I can, what are those positive things, those good choices they can make on the bus, and then talk about them. That brings me home to see my family, really helping them walk through all of those things. Now, a point to make with these social stories, these social narratives, even teaching replacement behaviors, all of these kinds of things, we do not ever teach these things while a child's in the middle of a meltdown, while a child is engaging in the behaviors. That is not the time to do it, right? We want to help them self-regulate. We want to help them calm down. And then when they are calm, or even a different day before they engage in the behavior, we do that teaching. We write those stories. We talk about what we could do instead. And really those social narratives, going back to that, you can use pictures of them, you can use pictures of real items, really helps making sure that it's there, and really helping to support them to walk through it. I don't know if any of you have seen Daniel Tiger. It's a new PBIS show, but he does such a great job. If he doesn't really like make a social story necessarily, but he talks about, like, there was one about the dentist and how do you go to the dentist and what does it look like and how do you walk through all these things. I mean, it's this really the same idea, and that's a great way to use them at home too, is like talk about, okay, today we're going to the dentist, or we're going to get our hair cut, or we're doing all these new things, and now you have to add the mask piece into it when you're going out, and put all of those things in your social story so they know what to expect. And that'll really help them be successful in those kinds of things, to really support them through it, and giving them options of what can I do in this environment really can help too, to support them to feel like they have a choice too. Great. I hope everybody's looking at the chat. There's lots of information being added there about all of these pieces. So this is really just a summary, and then we're going to have some time for questions and some time to talk as well. But PBIS, it is an effective approach to support students' behaviors in schools and in homes. Like, it's a behavior modification that we can use everywhere. And we want to make sure that we're really teaching families, that we're teaching professionals, that we're teaching paras, that we're teaching everyone in the school to engage in teaching students those positive behavioral supports. It does require working across multiple levels. So we have those implement components, we have teams, we have administrators, we have coaches, practical elements of teachers and staff, and I want to add in parents again. You know, all these important pieces all need to work together. If we don't work together, it's not going to work. Again, we want to teach them generalization. We want to teach them to do it in multiple environments. And it works best when every single person is on board and working together to support these students. It always involves the person supported, so it always involves a child. And thinking about the child, putting the child first, and what is important to the child? How is this child motivated? How are we going to do what's best for this child? And we need to think about that. It does create that effective change. And that was really, again, that was back at that beginning, what we talked about, is that effective change. It's across the lifestyle. It's, again, the person is involved, and that we're really making these changes for this child. And it does provide supports for a person and tiered supports for all, and the support is provided by all. So it's for everybody, and it's really supported by everyone. So it's all connected in everything that we're doing.
All right. Thank you, Bonnie. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So thank you. I want to let you know that there is a survey, and when you complete the survey, when you complete the survey, you'll get any credit you needed for showing that you attended. We provided Bonnie and Victoria's contact information here. And I just want to thank both of them, and we have a little time. So I'm going to ask Victoria if she has anything else to add, or Bonnie, or Erin Farrell representing the PBIS statewide teams as well. But I just want to say thank you for participating in the annual Collaborators Forum. We do this on a regular basis. Remember, we have 4 sessions. This is the second of the 4. You learned today a little bit more about the Minnesota PBS Network. We invite you to join us. You learned a little bit more about our aspirations for exemplary communities in our state across the lifespan. And today we focused on early childhood, and we always welcome suggestions for those. You learned more about our state's pyramid implementation. And then Bonnie did such a lovely job of taking 4 of the 9 critical feature areas identified in the PBS article we referenced. I did provide a link to that in the chat, around changing lifestyles, working across the lifespan, evolving people supported, and an emphasis on prevention. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the next one we'll be doing, we are going to be focusing on adult services and older adults as well. So we hope you will join us for one of those. We hope you'll join our Facebook. We hope you'll join our YouTube channel. Go to the next slide and you'll see all the organizations that are involved is coming up. But I want to remind you that there they are. These are all the organizations that are involved with the network, including the University of St. Thomas, where Bonnie is an assistant professor. We are excited that the APBS conference is coming up. So that's March 17th to 20th. And it's going to be online. You can learn more about it at apbs.org. But I wanted to just open it up just for some final comments from Victoria and the pyramid model. And Aaron Farrell, if you'd like to provide some, we talked about the PBS work done at the state level. Let's start with Aaron for just a moment, and then we'll try to take a few questions. Did you want to add anything, Aaron, from the PBIS network?
Sure. So actually, Bonnie, if I can share my screen really quick, I was just going to, and we can put these links in the chat as well. Give me 1 second here. All right. And, oops. What I was going to show really quick is just, well, I have the evidence-based practice site up here for the social narratives. That's one of the ones that we dropped in the chat. I also wanted to highlight the Minnesota Positive Behavior Support website as well. So all of the information on different things that we've talked about today is available here. I will also put this link in the chat unless we have several other members that can do that as well on here. And everything that we're doing and working on, and if you want to get involved with what we're doing, is available on here. This also does show our Collaborators Forum events and what we've been doing, just like we've been doing today, and how to register for all of those events. If you didn't get it, if you got it through an email, this is just another way to make sure that you know about what's happening. And then the only other thing I was going to add too is if you're also interested in learning more about PBIS in Minnesota and what we're doing, this is the website for our state work here. Our team is doing some fabulous work. We have all of our regions are either undergoing training currently or are starting training next week. So you'll see a lot of information about training, and also if you're a school that's interested in becoming a PBIS school, you can find out how to apply to be a part of our next cohort there.
Thank you, Aaron. And Victoria, would you like to add anything after the presentation in regards to the pyramid model and the information you heard today?
Yeah, I would just, I'd like to share the website if people want to learn more about pyramid model or how to become involved with the pyramid model. It's minco.org, MNCOE.org, the Minnesota Centers of Excellence for Young Children with Disabilities. And if you go to the State Innovations tab, that's easy to say, you will see pyramid model along with the other different innovations that we are doing across the state. And I also want to just make sure people know that the pyramid model is not just a Minnesota model. It is a nationwide model that is used across the United States. It's also used in some of the European countries as well. And so we have some really great research going on right now out of Florida around pyramid model. And so it is an evidence-based way of being within your classroom. And so really want people to know that this isn't just in Minnesota. It is all over the United States. And our biggest thing with pyramid model is to make sure people know that because we're working with littles, it's really about us as adults learning what we need to change within our approach or our environment in order to meet the needs of the little ones coming to us. And, in Minnesota, we talk about, ready schools, ready teachers, ready kids, ready families. And pyramid model, I feel, really helps with ready schools and ready classrooms. So that we're ready for meeting kids where they're at and providing them the supports they need so that we can get them to a place where they're ready for kindergarten. And thank you for letting me be a part of this. I really do appreciate it.
Your input was invaluable, so thank you so much. Aaron, could you share the contact information again for Bonnie and Victoria? Do you have that, or who had the PowerPoint up? And what we're going to do is we're going to stop the recording and we're going to open it up for questions. So I think we can stop the recording and we'll open it up for questions.